freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your recap episode for this week's Scottish Open. Joining me to break it all down, Greg DuCharme is here. And Greg, it's good to see you. I think we got another instant classic.
I think we did too, Rick. My, oh my. I mean, back-to-back years, the Scottish Open has delivered. The 72nd hole at the Renaissance Club has been just an absolute thriller, and it was no different today. I mean, what a week overall.
Yeah, what a week indeed. A lot of drama, a little bit or a lot of controversy coming in late. We've got Kyle Porter, who is going to join us as soon as he is off HQ and as soon as he is done with all his responsibilities. But Greg, let's set the table a little bit here. We've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. We like to point out the rounds of the day, the early movers. I'm just going to lump them all together here. Richard Mansell shot a 9 under 61. Wyndham Clark and Siwoo Kim both fired 8 under 62s. And Aaron Rai flies up the leaderboard to shoot a 7 under 63. That last one, very, very important. Actually, all of them were quite important because Aaron Rai with that round punched his ticket to the Open Championship. Richard Mansell punched his ticket to the Open Championship with that round. And Alex Noren, who played well all week, he got that third and final spot for those who are not otherwise qualified for next week.
Yeah, and I think Aaron Rai is clearly the headliner of this group as somebody who has been playing just phenomenal golf and continues to do so. And it wouldn't be surprising to see him play a significant role next week in the Open Championship. His game is, well, it seems to be very well built for this kind of golf. Obviously, he's played well here at the Scottish Open before, but the way that he's been playing lately is impressive. And you think about a style of play like Brian Harman last year at Royal Liverpool, how that might work this year at Royal Troon. Well, Aaron Rai could certainly fit that mold. So I think it's a really big deal for him. And you watch him play, and Rick, he just keeps it so simple. He keeps the ball in front of him. He keeps it out of significant trouble. And now it seems like he's really found something to go on with the putter, which has got to be exciting for his chances in the last major of the year.
Yeah, continues to play well and now gets to show it off in a big one. So Rai, Noren, and Richard Mansell, the final 3 positions in for next week. There are a lot of ways that we can start this here, Greg. It was a very interesting day. Romain Langas posted a 15 under par at one point. That set the clubhouse lead. A lot of eyes were on that final group in Ludvig and Robert MacIntyre. I'll start sort of there because Ludvig was played out of the storyline here, and he ends up finishing 4 shots off the pace. He was the favorite and a pretty heavy favorite before the final round started, Greg. Not a single birdie after the 5th hole for Ludvig. Well, like what went wrong for a guy who is seemingly so well-rounded and so great?
Well, Rick, I mean, he didn't have his best stuff. And I mean, obviously it wasn't his best performance. Shooting 3 over par 73, obviously not his best, but his ball striking, which has been so reliable, really let him down today. He wasn't able to put the ball in the fairway. He wasn't able to get it close with his iron shots. Even when it looked like he hit a good one and it was tracking at the flag, it was catching a slope and releasing away. He couldn't really get it inside 30 feet at any point. And I do think a lot of that comes from only hitting 5 of 13 fairways. You think about the par 5 early on the front 9, number 3, where he ends up making 6. He just hits himself in a terrible situation off the tee and has to chip out. That's very unlike Ludvig Åberg. And yet, this was another thing that I found fascinating. He's at 15 under par through 15 holes, playing another par 5, number 16, and he's greenside in 2. And this is an opportunity for him to get to 16, and he's still in the mix with 3 holes to go. Now, it turns out he would have had to play a pretty significant finishing stretch there, but he would have been within one shot with 3 holes to go and more holes than anybody else to play. And he chili dips a chip shot. It rolls back to his feet. And he's playing right alongside Robert MacIntyre as well. But that was a really disappointing bogey. So for Ludvig, not having his best stuff, making 2 bogeys on the par 5s, it's just it's very unlike Ludvig, and it's kind of highlighting a little bit of an issue he's had, Rick. I mean, you're talking about in his last 11 tournaments, 8 of those tournaments, actually now 9 of those tournaments, he shot 70 or worse in the final round. Hopefully that doesn't become an issue going forward, but it's looking like one right now.
So I'm glad that you kind of illustrated that on 15T, he still very much was in the golf tournament. It was kind of like a slow motion car wreck here. You know, he makes 4 bogeys throughout the day, only 1 birdie, and finishes 4 shots off the lead. But he doesn't know that when he's on 16T, he still has a chance to win the tournament, and we still don't get his best. This statistically, losing 4.5 strokes to the field is going to be the second worst round of his career. You mentioned the Sunday problem. How concerned are you?
Well, generally speaking, not concerned, right? I think Ludvig has so much talent. He will figure out how to deal with Sundays. And look, you can play an entire season on the PGA Tour. If you put yourself in the mix as often as Ludvig does, and you play 12 bad Sundays and 2 great Sundays, you can have a spectacular season on the PGA Tour. So I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind that he'll figure this out. And when you figure it out once, it leads to great things and a totally different perspective on Ludvig Åberg. I mean, it's still a relatively decent finish with a tied 4th. And we'll look at this later on heading into the playoffs. And it's just another top 5 finish in what has been a great year. So it's concerning, but it's something that I do think he'll figure out how to break through.
We've got Kyle Porter here. We're going to add him to the conversation right now. And KP, you are going to get the final word here on Ludvig Åberg and what was a very disappointing Sunday to go from 2 shots clear to 4 shots back over 18 holes.
Yeah, I mean, not good. I think the par 5s were problematic. You guys probably already talked about that. He played him in 9 over in the first 3 rounds, and then, 9 under in the first 3 rounds and 2 over today. So that to me is the difference. The left miss, Greg, is that a nerves thing?
Well, I think it may be more of a shot shape thing.
Okay.
Tendency of guys who hit draws. Doesn't seem like a quick snipe hook. Like, it doesn't seem like something that's going to lead to the yips. I do ultimately think that's something he can do and solve with fundamentals. And as he gets better mentally in final rounds under pressure, he'll be able to keep those in check a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree with Greg broadly that, I mean, look, like I think even for young stars, I think the traditional path to winning is through getting a lot of scar tissue. You think about Phil's career, you think about most, like, even super talented guys, their early part of their career is learning how to feel uncomfortable on Sunday, right? And I think that it's pretty unusual to be Morikawa, Spieth, Roar. I mean, there's just not that many guys that just win a bunch early. So I have zero concerns about it. He's, I mean, the chunk chip was like the most relatable thing I've ever seen in my life. I've hit that shot 9 million times approximately. But I think Ludvig's awesome. I think he's going to be awesome. I think he just has to learn what it feels like and how that changes his game on Saturday, Sunday to be in contention in big events.
The chunk chip and then immediately grab the putter is straight out of my playbook. No, I'm not going to do it twice. I know that for sure. I don't care if I'm 50 yards away. It does not matter.
I hit that. I hit that shot. I was playing in Pinehurst, not at Pinehurst, but when we were at the US Open, and I was like 70 yards out. I hit it, chunked it, hit it again, chunked it. I was like, I think I should putt this from 70 yards uphill.
I just have to get this club out of my hand. Cannot hold this club any longer. You know who else couldn't hold a club any longer? Collin Morikawa. Okay, this was a very, very strange tale of two nines, Greg, because Collin did apply that early pressure. He was putting the grind to the guys at the top of the board by going out in 32. That is 3 under. And then when he made the turn, everything goes sideways. He pars 10 and 16. Those are the 2 par 5s. He makes a double on 11. He makes 0 birdies coming in. And all of a sudden, he cannot find the center of the club face. He, by my count, I think he let go of the club after contact 3 separate times. Those were just on the full swings, a couple of putts that didn't drop for him. It was like he made the turn, he went to the second 9 and lost his superpowers.
Yeah, and on the front 9, he looked really confident. You know, he's hitting it solid. He's hitting it where he's looking, hitting it close at times. He looks really confident with the putter. Got a couple of nice putts to fall. And all I could think of when watching him on the front 9 is, you know, what you talked about on Monday, how well he's been playing in general, and just how close he is to a win. And all of a sudden, he hits that little double cross on 11, a significant pull, ends up making double. And then he chunks an iron shot. He loses one to the right, you know, some wipey cuts, some pulls, very uncharacteristic iron shots out of him. And the ones where he catches it solid, they don't end up close, you know, and it was quite disappointing. And I think if you're Collin Morikawa, you leave this feeling really disappointed. Like all of a sudden, this back 9, you've got yourself in the mix. You make the turn at 16 under, and all you got to do is shoot 2 under to get into a playoff on the back 9, which everybody, by the way, is tearing up earlier in the day. Like all those people we mentioned earlier, Rick, Siwoo and Mansell and Aaron Rai and Romain Langasque, all these guys got after it on the back 9. And all of a sudden, Collin Morikawa just goes completely cold and shoots away his chances at this tournament. I think the pull is ultimately the shot that he hates. And when he hit that on 11, I think it spooked him.
Yeah, and then it's hard to make those adjustments, KP, in the middle of the round. But Greg's absolutely right. The second 9 played a stroke and a half under par, about a stroke plus, easier than the front side did. So to see Collin get off to that great start with the scoring holes ahead and then back up stinks.
It does stink. And I think it's a little bit emblematic of his year, because you talk about feeling frustrated to not win based on how he played. He's got to feel frustrated to have not won based on how he's played all year. You know, Rick and I were talking about this maybe on Tuesday, but best statistical year of his career. And he has, I'm trying to think of, he was kind of in it at the Masters. There's been a lot of places where he's been like kind of close, but not. Has there been a place where you're like, hey, Morikawa could win with like 4 holes left?
I'm not sure he's like led. I'll have to look it up. I don't know if he's led on the back 9 on Sunday, but I feel like he is constantly 2 off the lead with 6 holes to go or something.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, you're in it. You're certainly in it. Like you can go do it, but he has to feel a ton of frustration. You just have to have a lot of trust in sort of the way that golf works. Of like, hey, if you're in it, if you're that close that for like over a long period of time, you're going to win a bunch. But man, in the short term, there's got to be a lot of frustration, especially when he's kind of voiced that he gets frustrated pretty easily. I mean, remember that, was it 2 years ago, Rick, when him and Trevor Immelman had that weird thing? And I don't know. I'm interested in his psyche going into the Open.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy when it comes to stuff like that. And I do think, Greg, I think you're absolutely right. I think he had the miss that pops up every now and then, and it's the worst time to get it because you're just under all the pressure and you can't go to the range and work it out. You just have to hit the next shot.
Yeah, it's a tough position to be in. And I think that one bothers him. and he hadn't seen it really very often during the week. It's something he's been getting rid of all year. He's kind of played the opposite shot at times. I think he's played lower quality shots that work out because he knows where it's going. Like, I don't know if it's going to be a great shot, but I know it's moving to the right. And then all of a sudden it moves to the left. And it's like, oh, wait a second. This is what I've spent all year working on. And now all of a sudden this is in there. What do I do now? and I think it kind of, just because of the subsequent shots that we saw, some really poor contact, some really wipey fades to the right, shots coming up way short that are uncharacteristic of his typical game.
Yeah, we're talking about like 205 or 215 yard approaches that he hits 180 yards, which is just bizarre stuff.
Not him.
Yeah, we are going to get to the two stars of this Scottish Open show. That's Adam Scott. It's Robert MacIntyre. We are going to update the bets. We're going to recap the one and done. We're even going to probably look ahead to the Open Championship. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Adam Scott was the first to post 17 under par, KP, and he did it with a lot of firepower on Sunday because a 3 under 67 that included not one, but two bogeys and a double on number 8, the par 4. So you've got to offset all of those crooked ones with some smooth ones. And he did just that to give himself a chance, to give himself a really good chance to get into a playoff.
Yeah, he did. This was really impressive. I think one of the underrated, I was talking, maybe you and I were talking about this, Rick. I think I talked to Andy Johnson about it recently, but one of the underrated ways to measure somebody's career is their longevity. And so I mean, for Adam Scott to be out there contending with Ludvig and Sahith and Morikawa and Hovland, guys that are 20 years younger than him, that's pretty crazy. When he won his first pro event 23 years ago, back in 2001, it's really, really impressive. And I thought that the double is tough, right? It's so hard to bounce back from a double. He made a ton of birdies though, and he gave himself a chance to win on 18. I mean, he had that putt on 18 to go win it. I thought that was a kind of a bad effort. Like it didn't, just no chance to go in. So I thought he played great. It would be so cool, I think, to see him get in the mix at Royal Troon. Him. I actually put a poll out on Twitter. Maybe we can pull up the results later. But who's had a better one major career between him and Sergio? I think they've been just so good for such a long time, and to see either of them get a chance to win another major, in their early to mid 40s, I think would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, Adam Scott has kept that same golf swing, and why change it, Greg, for as long as he's been a professional, and he's had a good year. I'm sure we talked about him a lot on a lot of Mondays this year because he started off 2024, or at least ended 2023 on a really good stretch on the DP World Tour, and then he had a bunch of just good, not great results. This is the first time that we've seen him near the top of the leaderboard since Phoenix. Phoenix was his last top 10.
Right. So this just his second on the PGA Tour in 2024. And at the same time, it hasn't been bad performances at all. It's been good performances, but you just don't get to see a lot of them. So this was really nice to get a chance to watch Adam Scott in contention coming down the stretch. And I legitimately, most of this day, most of the back nine, I thought it looked like he was going to win. He makes the double at 8 and then turns around with the hole out on 9 from the bunker, makes birdie at 10 and he gets it right back immediately. Then the shot at 14, he gets close. Nobody else could get that close
That's
Right.
when I thought he was going to win, Greg. When he stuffed it at 14, I was like, oh man, this is happening here.
I felt that too.
Gets to 17. Then he makes bogey at 15 with kind of a poor iron shot out to the right. And
not a very good chip either, Greg.
No, it really wasn't. So it was a disappointing bogey. And then on 16, I feel like they were in one of those news updates, and I might have been me, but I missed 16 somehow. I saw that he made another birdie, and I said, "Oh, it's his. It's Adam Scott's. This is unbelievable. I cannot believe it. What a performance. And I thought today's performance was really quite good. Couple of mistakes, but making all the birdies. What he's done with the putter has been incredible. And it seemed like in this round, for the most part, for 90% of this round, his ball striking kind of has matched up to the way that he's been putting for the latter part of his career. So it was impressive. Always fun to watch Adam Scott in the mix. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what a 15th PGA Tour win would mean for Adam Scott today.
Yeah. Led the field in birdies, 27 of them, 5th off the tee, 26th in approach, 47th around the green, and 9th with the putter. That's how you add it up to 17 under par and a second place finish. But he falls short. And he falls short to the man who has given us a few very exciting and what's the word I'm looking for? Interesting, divisive, potentially moments this year. All positives for Robert MacIntyre getting the win with Papa MacIntyre on the bag at the RBC Canadian Open. It is a little bit of a slow start for Bobby Mack for the most of this round. He steps on 16T, even par for the day, and 16 KP is where this whole thing turned on its head. Would you like me to describe that moment, or would you like to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm with Greg. I was kind of in and out. I saw the majority of it, but I was kind of in and out because of news updates. So you go ahead.
So Robert MacIntyre on the tee of 16, the par 5, yanks his drive right into the rough, and it is thick. It is nasty. It is knee high, thigh high, fescue. He takes a practice hack. This thing he moves a lot of grass. So you could tell it's a crap lie. And he looks down and he kind of has this quizzical look on his face. And I thought that maybe he moved the ball initially when he took the practice swing, because he calls in a rules official. And a very quick ruling reveals that when Robert MacIntyre took that practice swing, he stepped on a sprinkler head that was under all that under all that thick stuff. He didn't know it was there. When he took the practice swing, his metal spikes made a noise. He felt it. He heard it. So with that, he gets to get relief from the sprinkler head. He gets the free drop. The drop could not have been better. The ball is now very, very visible, sitting up, and Robert takes advantage. He hits that from 247 yards, 247 yards to 6 feet, KP.
Yeah, it was, we got a great normal sport moment because Dottie Pepper said the only reason that he discovered that it was a sprinkler head is because he was wearing metal spikes. If he'd been wearing rubber or non-metal spikes, he wouldn't have known that it was a sprinkler head. I have such mixed feelings about this, right? Because I was watching with my sons earlier, and they're rooting for Ludvig because they, obviously, like, Ludvig's young, good looking, played in the Big 12, whatever. And I'm rooting for Bobby Mack. I'm like, oh, that'd be so cool if he won. It just the best, like, to be from Scotland, to win your home open the way he lost last year. But then this happens, and you're like, it doesn't feel very good, right? And I don't know. It's not a Bobby Mack thing. He didn't do anything wrong, whatever. First of all, I didn't like if Rick, if you got on here and we were doing trivia and you said, are there sprinkler heads on golf courses in Scotland? Not in the rough, just anywhere. I would have been like, no idea. I have no clue. Like it just seems like a strange non-Scottish thing to have sprinkler heads in the rough, especially anywhere, but especially in the rough. That was stunning to me. So it was an amazing shot. It doesn't feel great. I feel very conflicted about it. And I don't know if that's how everybody else watching felt, but it was very odd.
The problem, I guess, Greg, and I'm with Kyle in the sense that I don't blame Robert MacIntyre. That's like, I blame the rule here, right? If I'm upset about anything, it's a rule. I just don't like it when you can go from what is a D- situation, get free relief and get upgraded to like a B+ situation in knee-high fescue. That's the problem, right? In sport, you don't want outside influence, referees, fans, sometimes even luck. Like, you just don't want these things influencing the outcome of sporting events. I think that's pretty universal. And the problem in golf is when something like this happens, it feels like the outcome was impacted.
Yes, and look, there's a couple ways to look at it, because at the same time, if somebody drove it right down the middle of the fairway and they have to stand at a sprinkler head, or on a drain like Akshay Bhattia's ball went into a couple weeks ago. But if they're standing on a situation like that, it's like, well, they hit a perfect shot. And now they got to stand on this, on a manhole cover. It wouldn't seem right either. So there's a great challenge in creating the rules of the game where you have to cover all kinds of circumstances that some would define as normal sport circumstances. Right? They come up all the time. And I do think the rules of golf do a wonderful job an amazing job to me of having a rule in place for all of these various situations. I can't believe it that they have a rule sometimes for these bizarre situations. So I think that's amazing. But I understand where you're coming from, because you're in fescue and all of a sudden I'm also confused about this situation. He stepped on it during the practice swing. Would it have been there if he was making the real swing? How close was, like, I didn't get a really good sense of where this was. He hit it with his foot during a practice swing. Your feet are going to change position over the real ball. And if you're taking that kind of a practice swing in that kind of rough, you're going to be away from the ball a little bit. I think. So it was very bizarre. But again, no hard feeling, no fault of Robert MacIntyre. I would go as far as to say no fault of the rules either, because of the situation. Now, the great thing about it is the shot that he hit.
Yeah.
After. The unfortunate thing is that this takes away from that shot that was absolutely incredible. It just always feels like he hits these shots from nowhere that come down right on the flag. Just where did that come from? He does this all the time.
Well, I didn't even think the reaction. I think it was Frank Nobila that was on the call. I didn't even think his reaction met the. I mean, he was like kind of going crazy, and I was like, "This is like the shot of the year almost." Given the situation and what was going on. I think one thing, Rick, is, well, two things. One, we see this happen every week. Like, we see like a variation of this. The reason this felt weird is because you don't see it so obviously impact the outcome of the tournament. The truth is that it does impact the outcome of the tournament every single week, but rarely is it like the guy that's in second with 3 holes left and he gets up and down from eagle when he would have been scrambling from par. It's like the worst version of that. Right. And then I think too, like, we see this happen when, for instance, if you take your ball out to see if it's embedded, then you have to recreate the lie if it's not. So that's the terminology, is you recreate the lie. I don't know why we can't do that with, and we certainly don't need to go down a rules rabbit hole here, but I don't know why we can't do that with instances like this of like, you can move it 6 inches and recreate the lie. And then everybody like that seems like a pretty obvious win for everyone.
Well, I would tell you that that's a silly idea if that rule didn't already exist, right? Like like if you told me, if I didn't know anything about the rule book and you were like, yeah, you just have to try to make it as equal as it was, which is like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah. Let me tell you, let me show you how to recreate it. But that you're 100% right. And that does exist. So we could do this. We could just say, apply same rule, get it down in there. You know how far down there it was, get it down in there and recreate that guy.
It's a really interesting concept. Not a terrible point. I think there are probably situations where that becomes difficult to do.
Yeah.
But they're very creative with language and the way the rules are written. And you could do, as, no closer to the hole, but right, as best you can recreate the lie, given the new conditions.
Yeah. I mean,
Or also, how about you just don't get sprinkler head relief unless you're in the short grass.
Well, the problem is we're thinking of reaction to everything that happened today. I'm sure there's 10 other scenarios where it would go poorly for what we're trying to figure out. So yeah. I don't know. It's a normal sport thing. It's a golf thing. It's a bummer. It's a bummer for MacIntyre, right? Because it's a huge part of the conversation and he did nothing wrong. And it will be talked about as it relates to this tournament and this win, I think, or it is being talked about. In the long term, I don't know if it'll be talked about, but certainly in the short term, it's part of what I wrote about on Sunday. So I hate that for him, but he did still hit the shot and he still made 3 on 18 as well.
Yeah, he did. He hits the shot. He knocks in the 6-footer for eagle. He gets to 18 and he hits a shot to 22 feet, 1 inch, knowing you make it, you win your National Open, you 2-putt, you're going to a playoff with Adam Scott. And I mean, this is, you got to have some guts on this one, Greg. I mean, he rolls it in for his National Open. He gives us the full on celebration. I mean, it was an awesome finish. He had to hit all the shots. He did it.
Even you think about 18, right? He's got 22 feet, 1 inches. He hits the shot in there. It stops. They show Adam Scott and the score is 10. And he's smiling like, okay, because this is the perfect distance where Adam Scott has no clue what's going to happen.
Yep.
Robert MacIntyre stands over it and thinks, I can make this.
Yep. But if I don't, yes.
It's not a 2-footer where it's so dramatic. It's the perfect distance for a make it and win.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to 3-putt this. I'm not pressured because I'm not supposed to make it, but it is just the distance where, hey, I could make this.
I could make it, right? We get the read right. I can make it. And he does, and it drips in with perfect speed. It took forever to get there. And the greens are so slow. It's like he left it short. It's still going. It went in. Oh, it was that was awesome. It was just perfect.
To drip it in on those greens is crazy.
Yes.
Right? Like you drip putts in at Augusta, whatever, but like to drip it in on greens with that speed that's insane. Like that's not you gotta ram it in, and he did not, and it still went. It was pretty cool.
It was awesome. And it now makes Robert MacIntyre twice a winner on the PGA Tour this year alone. There's only 3. There's only 3 multiple time winners on tour this year. Scotty Scheffler, 6 of them. Rory McIlroy, which is really 1.5 because one of them is the Zurich Classic. And now Robert MacIntyre enters the conversation and wins his 2nd of the year. He's been very open, KP, about like how lonely it is being on the PGA Tour as a European and how difficult things are and all of that. Well, wins with dad on the bag in Canada, wins his National Open. He has got to be just at an all-time high.
Totally. I mean, think about his last 52 weeks, really, to lose the Scottish, to be on the Ryder Cup team, to really play poorly at the beginning of 2024, bounce back with Canada and now the Scottish Open. It's not like, I mean, no offense to the John Deere, it's not like he's winning the John Deere. Those are pretty big time events. And it's what's interesting is he doesn't necessarily have the talent to warrant this kind of run, and yet he's still going on it, which I think is just so cool. Like the people have written, Brody Miller of The Athletic wrote a profile of MacIntyre this week. People should go check it out. He's just like kind of talk about relatable. Like he's just kind of a guy. I mean, obviously he's very talented at golf. He's a professional golfer. He wins on the PGA Tour, on the European Tour, but he's not Rory. This is what we kind of talked about last year. Like he's not Morikawa. Like he's not Ludvig. Ludvig has so much more talent than Bob MacIntyre. And so to see Bob MacIntyre win Canada, win Scotland, like, come on, like it's the stuff of dreams. And I loved how open he was about, I think he said on Saturday, this is the one I want the most, which is just, I mean, come on, like that's freaking awesome. And it was cool to see him handle that both so well mentally down the stretch, but also to see the reaction to it after he actually did it.
Yeah, that's a lot easier, Greg, to say on Sunday, looking back and saying, oh, that was the one I wanted to win more than anything. To reveal that on Saturday night,
yeah,
with 18 to go, oh, that sets you up for some stuff.
Yeah, and you really believe him too, which is,
yeah.
I'm not sure why, but if Scotty Scheffler said that he wanted to win the Charles Schwab Challenge more than any other tournament, you'd laugh, because it doesn't. It's like, well, no, you surely want to win the Masters or the U.S. Open or the Open more, right? But it doesn't necessarily feel that way with Robert MacIntyre. Maybe now it will change. Maybe it should change, because there's something about him that I can't figure out. Something about him that I really like, and it feels like he just knows how to shoot great scores. He's not an elite driver of the golf ball, not an elite iron player. He talked about in his post round how poor his wedge play has been. That needs to improve, right? He's worked hard at it, but he's not an elite wedge player. And I wouldn't consider him an elite putter either. So, yeah, I also wouldn't say he's bad in any of those areas. It's a lot harder to define what makes Robert MacIntyre great. So it makes him hard to pick, makes him hard to be a favorite. You just kind of know that he's going to play well in an event like this, but you don't know it any other weeks. It's very hard to figure out in that sense. And it makes me wonder here in his comments this week if it just simply is a function of where is he in his headspace? Like, is there really a lot more talent behind Robert MacIntyre that we don't see because he's feeling lonely, because he's not playing in a tournament that he really cares about? Not that he doesn't, but when he does care, this comes out. It's a very interesting thing, and I'm not sure that I really understand Robert MacIntyre as a player just yet, but it's very cool what we've seen in the last couple weeks.
Rick, let me read you his last 6 years of strokes gained. This is Data Golf True Strokes Gained. Plus 0.48, plus 0.33, plus 0.38, plus 0.33, minus 0.09, plus 0.09. He's tour average. Like, he's just an average PGA Tour guy. But I think what you're describing, Craig, is he's got a sense of the moment, it seems like, a little bit. I think about Rome last year, the first tee. He's been driving it terribly. People are like, he's going to sit till Sunday. It's like a 335-yard drive off the first tee. And you're like, oh, well, he kind of like wants the ball. Like, he's kind of big shot Bob, and I think that's something that is not guaranteed. Not everybody has that. And it's cool to watch. It's cool to watch from somebody that just by statistical definition is a very average PGA Tour player.
Big shot Bob back in the winner's circle in Scotland. And oh, by the way, there's a major championship next week. We are going to quickly recap the bets in the one and done because I want to talk Open Championship with you boys. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
And we're back. KP got us the only green that we found this week. Thank goodness. Carlos Ortiz to finish inside the top 20. Tommy Fleetwood to beat Victor Hovland in a matchup. And we had a bunch of opportunities sprinkle around. A couple of Ludvig, Rory, Tommy Fleetwood, Collin Morikawa. A lot of guys who are in the mix. None of those coming through on the outright card. So KP, congrats. Keep the good times rolling.
Yeah, I hate for Patrick that his Matthew Pavone bet over other French dudes didn't work out.
It actually was almost, I'm pretty sure he was the worst French dude.
Didn't Romain Langasque finish like 7th or something?
Finished
third.
Solo third. After he called him Romain Lasagna.
Oh my God.
Or lettuce.
Or lettuce. Yeah, what did he call him? Yeah. Called him
well, I had Ludvig too. That was tough down the stretch.
That was tough. That was almost a good one. Our best bets, I had Max Homa to miss the cut. He makes the cut on the number and then finished like basically dead last out of everybody who was still in the field. Luke Clinton will not. Well, you know what? Actually, no, I guess he's done playing. I was going to say, is it mathematically possible for Luke Clinton to win the alternate field event? And the answer is no. They're still out there right now. There's a lot of golf to be played. Harry Hall leads the way amongst just a bunch of guys, but there's still more than a dozen holes to play over there. Tommy Fleetwood did not finish inside the top 20. Oh, he had a terrible Sunday.
He shot 71 today. He was not good.
Yeah. So this was disappointing in general, especially because on our last page, I had a Robert MacIntyre top 20 typed in. I said, I don't really know why. Like, I don't know how to explain this. So, but I feel really good about Matthew Pavone. So I'll get him in there. Doesn't work out. Justin Thomas shoots 62 in the first round. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't look good. But it turns out all Spieth had to do is make the cut. And he probably would have beat JT. It doesn't work out. It's just a nightmare on the card this week.
Justin Thomas went 62, 72, 71, 71. First round leader to T62. The one and done. Jordan Spieth missed the cut. Hideki Matsuyama missed the cut. Tom Kim got Greg, Mark, and Josh 141,000. Patrick had Tommy Fleetwood for 46,000. So not a ton of movement here for us. In fact, I do not believe any positions changed here. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. No, everybody remains the same. I can't actually, I bet you there were some Robert MacIntyre selections in the big one.
Yeah, I would think so.
There were definitely some Ludvig ones.
There were
probably some Aaron Rye.
47.
Wow.
MacIntyres.
That many.
And then a lot of fourth place finishes because fourth place was Rye, McIlroy, Morikawa, Sahith, Ludvig, like a ton.
Sung Jae.
A ton of those.
Yeah. So I'm gonna fall pretty far with the T15.
There were also a ton of Tommy Fleetwoods.
It's Tommy season, and he just, I don't know. I'm so conflicted about. We can transition into next week. I don't know what to think about him next week at Troon. I mean, it should be just tailor-made for him, no pun intended. But I don't know, man. Like, what's he gonna do?
I'll do it. I'll declare it Open Championship week. Headed to Royal Troon for the first time since 2016, our final major of the year. Enjoy it. It's like 250 days in between major championships. I mean, Tommy's one thing, but what are we keeping our eye on, KP? I feel like sometimes there's a lot of different stories. Sometimes there's one that sucks up a lot of the oxygen. Where are we headed for Troon?
Okay, I'm just gonna give you. I jotted down. This was like right after HQ. I jotted down 8 storylines that I'm about to write about once we're done with this this podcast, and I want to see which one sticks out the most to you. Okay, I'll just read them real quick.
Okay,
and I don't even know if I'm gonna keep all 8, but probably the Open. So like the most. I don't think Scheffler is gonna win, which means I have no idea who's gonna win.
Oh, okay.
Rory's psyche. Bryson's huge opportunity. Bryson has a chance to have like one of the great major seasons of all time if he wins. Scheffler needs one. What I mean by that is he's played just the level at which he's played would suggest like probably a 2 major season. So need is like relative there. Tommy, the best Open player of the last 5 years. What's the non-Bryson live presence? Like, is Brooks still playing majors? Is Rahm good right now? Like, I don't know what to make of all that. Under the radar, Morikawa, and then just Troon's history. Like, what does Troon produce? So, what of those sticks out to you guys?
So I always lean towards the historic one. So the Bryson having a chance to do a historic major championship season, I think is interesting. I also think what does Troon produce? Because I do think that as far as rota courses go, Troon is somewhat unique with a couple of elements, which I like about it. So those were the first 2 that pop into my head. Greg, what did you take from those?
I would add the Scotty needs one. I think that's a fascinating discussion. And I understand that you said it's relative, but there's some truth to that. You don't get these seasons very often on the PGA Tour, and it seems like this is just what Scotty does, and it seems like it can go on forever. But history tells us that this kind of performance doesn't go on forever.
Yeah,
and so we're in a very similar situation to where we were last year with him, where he only had 2 wins, and it was an all-timer with his ball striking. This has been an all-timer all around, and it does feel like something would be missing with the 1 major season, which is a crazy thing to say. Yeah, he won the Masters. How is anything? He is dominating the FedEx Cup standings, right? Dominating the official World Golf Rankings. How could anything be missing? Yet, I don't think you're crazy to say that.
That's interesting. I don't know. I think if he missed the cut, I'd still look at this and be like, Scotty had an unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. I just, yeah, you want seasons like this to produce things on your historical resume that, like other seasons just can't produce. Like Spieth's season is not going to produce an Open win. Feel free to play that back if it does. But like Scotty, it's I guess what I'm saying is it's kind of weird that him and who else has 2 major wins, like almost like a Bryson or a Morikawa. Those guys are, I'm not like, those guys are amazing, but Scotty's been at a level like a Tiger level, and so you're like, wow, he only has 2 majors. It's not weird, but it's also like it would feel good for him to have produced more than just a 1 major season.
Okay, so that I get that, which makes me think of 2. I also do like what is is Bryson the only live guy? Where is Cam Smith? Where is John Rahm? What is Brooks Koepka? I don't even know. Like, what's the trend line been for how many live guys have even been playing in the last 8 major championships? Right? Are we getting to a smaller amount? But the other thing is, as you were kind of going through that, I do always really like when guys go from like 2 majors to 3 or 3 to 4. Is like a very huge thing. And when you've got so Collin's got 2, Bryson's got 2, Scotty's got 2. I don't know who else is kind of in that short.
Has 3.
JT.
Yeah. So like there's that because there's always multiple of those guys,
Mm-hmm.
and as you start cranking them up, you get on a shorter and shorter and shorter list. So I and especially when you've got like Scotty who's doing it in a run, Collin who would be historically young, I imagine, Bryson who would be doing it in just a lot of different ways. There would be some very, very cool winners.
Yeah, totally. And then, like to contrast that with what we got last year, which is not an out of nowhere winner, but not somebody that any of us picked, in Brian Harmon. I think the one that sticks out to me, well, the two, and they were the first 2 that I wrote. So just it being like, I don't even know who to pick, honestly. Like I truly don't. Usually I go into these things and I'm like, I think it's going to be one of these 3 guys. I'm usually wrong, but I at least have some inkling. I have no clue, guys. Like I truly do not. And then 2, I think Rory's psyche. I think Rory's going to be in it. Like I think he'll be in the mix on a Saturday morning or maybe a Sunday afternoon. Like, how does he respond? How does he react to that? What does he feel? How uncomfortable does he get? I think that is fascinating. I mean, just coming off Pinehurst, the Scottish Open is like, okay, you worked out some things that you hadn't played for a month. Okay, you're back in the mix, back on the saddle, right? And I just don't like. I think like his psychological reaction to being in the mix at a major is super interesting going into this week.
The point of no return. You ever heard of this concept?
Yeah.
Where you get far enough along in some journey and it's not worth it to go back. Like
it's like Phil's career.
Yeah, it's like, hey, it would take just as much effort to quit as it would not to. If I'm Rory McIlroy and I'm in the mix like I expect him to be on Sunday, it's like there is at this point nothing to lose. Because what happened at Pinehurst is as devastating as it gets.
Yep.
I mean, you got to go to like John Van de Velde for a worse possible outcome.
And if he does the same exact thing, Greg, it's not like it's going to be twice as bad. It's still going to be just as crappy as it was when it happened at Pinehurst.
Right. So, if
I love this.
Talking to Rory about it, it's like, hey, this is like a free, it doesn't matter what's happened before, right? There are critics that are saying you're never going to win one because you just can't do it. Like, do you really think you just can't do it? That's a crazy thing.
So we actually hit Rory rock bottom is what we're talking about.
Wait, who has? He has or we have?
Hopefully, I guess in Greg's scenario, hopefully he has, because that makes the way that I interpret Greg's thoughts here, and I agree with, is that like
it can't get worse.
It cannot get worse. So you might as well just freewheel this thing, and who cares? Like those feelings you felt, they're not going to be worse. So who cares?
For sure. I think 2 things. I think one, we're often critical of him being too aggressive at majors, right? Where it's like, dude, why are you ripping at pins on like Thursday morning, And so I think from that sense, like you don't want to be, I feel very conflicted on this because from that sense, you don't want to go out and just be like insane with the way that you play the golf course. But on the other hand, I've talked myself into that the only way he's going to win another major is like the Kiowa plan, which is you're up by 8, like going to the bag 9, right? Because he has the talent to do it, and you take so much of the psychological stuff out of it that it to me it almost seems like the more straightforward path, even though it's incredibly difficult to do. But I don't know how to reconcile those 2 things, because you don't want to go out and try to shoot 60 on Thursday and end up shooting 73. But also, I think that is maybe the path for him to win another major championship.
Yeah, but I do think that Rory understands how to play these tournaments as 4-round events, right? He's shown us that over the last couple of years. I'm not saying like be conservative or be aggressive. I'm just saying you have nothing come Sunday,
Right.
when you're in the mix, up by 8, down by 2, tied for the lead, whatever the situation is, you got nothing to lose. Like, there should almost be, at this point, so much scar tissue. There's no scar tissue. It's not going to change.
Yes.
It either stays the same or you've conquered the hill.
It's a mindset. There is no feeling you will feel that is worse than what you have felt recently.
Right.
And there is so much scar tissue that any they can't even touch you. They don't even break through. It doesn't matter. You are in a bubble, sir.
You're either going to have done it before or feel better than you've ever felt in your entire life.
I might pick him. Greg might be talking me into him.
We'll see. Let's just wait until Tuesday.
I mean, who like, yeah, exactly. Who would you guys pick today if I said you gotta give me a pick? Like I haven't thought about it a ton, but I just don't even know.
I would be between Rory and Scotty.
Okay.
I would be between God, why would I say Rory? But I feel like I'm gonna say Rory. So I would be between Rory and Collin.
Okay. I think
I'm not ready to give up on Collin.
I think that I wanted, like, this time last week, I would have said Tommy. I didn't love the way he played this week. I think I might be between Rory and Ludvig.
Man, get those guys into a choke fest on Sunday.
That would be just if you give me Rory and Ludvig and the Phil Stinson deal.
Oh man.
Might not be able to handle that.
I don't know. The guy who's been the best player in the world for 2 years is probably the right pick.
Well, and producer Josh just said, is there a reason why Scotty's not front of mind? I think he hasn't been good at opens. I mean, for him, right? He's finished, I think he has 1 top 10 or 1 top 15, something like that. But, I think I was talking to somebody about, maybe Andy Lack, I was talking to the other day about what frustrated him at Pinehurst can also be true at opens, which is this sort of random nature of like where your drive ends up. It's just some different things like that. It's not as controllable as it is at a Muirfield Village or a Colonial or somewhere like that. So I think that's an interesting thing to watch with Scotty is a little bit of the randomness that happens at Open Championships.
Yeah, he did not like that. And you should, if you're the best player in the world, you should not like luck because you're better.
But I do think there's a difference with Pinehurst specifically. And that's just the greens. Like the bouncing in the fairway, I could see that frustrating. The bounces you get in the fairway, maybe even into the greens, if it's really firm and fast, could be frustrating. But I don't think you're going to see Scotty Scheffler have no clue reading the greens the way he did at Pinehurst and admit it, which I think that plays into his favor pretty significantly at this point on Sunday afternoon.
We have a lot lined up for next week. So the normal 6-day pod, that's a DFS preview on Monday, a mega preview pod on Tuesday, round by round recaps, all of that, plus 2 live network shows on CBS Sports Network. The first is Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. That will serve as kind of your last look, final thoughts. We're ready to rock and roll at that point in the week. We'll be dying to kick this thing off. And then Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, which should serve a similar purpose as the one we did just this past Friday, which is basically the cut has been made. We're at the halfway point. We are looking ahead to the weekend. How's this whole thing going to play out from here?
Can't wait. But my favorite week of the year.
It's going to be sick.
Yeah, it's going to be. What's your sleep schedule, Rick? You have the most unique problem out of the 3 of us.
Yeah, so I've been doing basically like I wake up and watch golf. It's the first thing that I do. It's not like the last thing I do before bed. So it'll be earlier this week, I was like going to sleep at 6 p.m., waking up at like midnight or 1, watching through going. So I'm going to try to keep that same schedule.
Yeah. I mean, that's just it's a harder version of what me and Greg have to do. I'm usually like a 9 to 3 or 4 guy. Yeah. Which is kind of close to the same actual time according to Greg's time zones thing.
Yeah. Actual time. Wake up at the time.
Which I'd still kind of, I don't know if I agree with it, but I think it's but it might be the best take of all time. I just don't know if I'm into it.
I am gonna have a really hard time getting up before 4:30. So I get up at like 4:45 every day anyway. So I'm probably gonna wake up 15 minutes earlier. I'll get up at 4:30, catch up on anything that I may have missed, which shouldn't be too much. And I'll be ready to go.
The good news is, it gets a lot easier on the weekend, right?
Yes.
I don't need to watch Max Homa, like, the first group out on Saturday struggle, or I don't necessarily need to watch that. But when you still have featured groups morning and afternoon wave on Thursday and Friday, I do feel like I need to watch that, and I want to watch that. So it is hard to stop myself from doing that. So I end up, Thursday, or I guess Wednesday night and Thursday night are the hardest. And then it gets like a lot easier after that.
I can't ever sleep on Wednesday night. It stinks. I'm just so excited. And I know I have to be up early. It's not good.
Yeah. It's tough. All right. Well, we're in it now. 2 straight weeks in Scotland, 1 in the books. The Open Championship is here. We've got all that content lined up for next week. Big thanks to producer Josh, who does all the hard work behind the scenes. It's Greg DuCharme. You can find him at The Real GFD. That's Kyle Porter, where you can find him at Kyle Porter CBS. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.